Hello and welcome again to Front Seat to Climate Change. I'm your host Dawar Hamid. Today we're talking about the subject of businesses and how they're responding to the challenges of climate change. Joining me is Memosh Khawaja, who is the founder of ILMNET and also the former CEO of PICG, Henkel and Haleeb Foods. Welcome to the show and thank you for your
Assalamualaikum.
time. I think we already have these conversations, WhatsApp, informally everywhere, how the need for business responsibility has increased substantially over time, both as an outcome of people asking for it, but also businesses realizing that, if there is going to be flooding in Kurangi, their goods can't move out to the port. Or if there's going to be hailstorms in Islamabad, how are people going to go to food outlets? So there's this idea that climate change is now impacting business as well. And this is driving this need for becoming more responsible, doing what you can, environmental stewardship. So there's this evolution from what we used to have as corporate social responsibility, and which is becoming more like environmental stewardship, ESG, environmental social governance, tracking your impact. So I think we need to understand that what do you think is really the challenge here? How can businesses do more, and what are they already doing to respond to it as well?
Yeah, thanks. As you rightly pointed out, we were always, businesses were always inclined towards corporate social responsibility for the last several decades. However, it was more of a out of your own free will support, which you could support in terms of education, health, any sector, any area where you felt that you could, where you probably had a link to traditionally or had a foundation for. However, it was not very much linked to the business itself, the sustainability of the business itself. So this is where we have evolved to, where we believe, and the science has proven, and of course society has also been streaming for it, that businesses' own sustainability, long-term sustainability, will rely on how well businesses protect and advance the risks around their sustainable efforts, be it environment or social efforts. So that's where we are at, and the new ESG movement or sustainability movement, as you have said, is basically raising this awareness of responsibility towards their own risk management. And the risk, unfortunately, as we have seen in Pakistan, it comes in spurts. So people do face those events. People have not realized whether this will come back. Is this a random event, or is this something part of a certain scientific process that will happen regularly and with much more repercussions? So I think we are now reaching a point where people have realized that it's happening very frequently, and even then, sometimes it touches upon only certain sectors of our businesses. Maybe agriculture, maybe transport, maybe infrastructure. So those who suffer would have probably realized this to some extent. But when we come to other sectors where it doesn't touch upon everybody's operations, businesses are still distant from it. And there you have to do a lot more scientific selling or convincing of why this might happen to them, how it affects their larger domain. So much so that even those who are in trading or services sectors, for example, financial institutions, who have a big role to play, they have to also realize that it's their customers and the customers who are getting affected. So at some point, it is going to come back and affect them. So I think the whole value chain has to be drawn out, and then only the full picture will be clarified. So we are on the journey, I would say, and we are on the journey of this risk realization, where we have to cascade it all the way down to the complete value chain. I think we are at the top tier at this stage, but efforts are going on in terms of pushing it down.
And when you say top tier, I think this is in terms of the incentive to do a lot of this action, which is semi-regulatory, thinking that you're responsible. And one example that also always we bring it in discussions is that regulation is really the driver for a lot of these things.
Yeah.
That you bring in the incentive, you bring in the carrot and stick, and things start happening. We saw this with the renewable sector, where state banks, very minor incentives in the beginning, creating this, spurt of entrepreneurs wanting to become players in the solar energy market, which has, really, really accelerated Pakistan's own adoption of solar now.
Yeah.
And it might happen with EVs as well, whereas, still, again, beginning of that journey. But what is the role, real role of the overall regulatory landscape, not just the state bank, but others as well, to really drive these changes?
Yeah, I think policy is one of the major drivers of because policy will drive incentives and it will drive economics. And once those two levers are moving, then we can expect businesses to also start moving. You will appreciate that the businesses are in the business of business, right? So they see, at the end of the day, it's the capital that will drive them. It's the profits that will drive them. As much as we want to talk about the responsibility angle of it, however, when we really want to move the needle, we have to make the businesses feel that there is an incentive for them to move towards it. And that will be driven by policy and, of course, economic incentives. You've given the example of energy and solar. There was an incentive. It made some initial movement. But we do believe that at the end of the day, when the overall incentive or economic framework for businesses became much more viable, that's when the adoption really took off. And it did not require any further policy support even to that extent, and then it still kept moving on. So I think policy or economics have to make sense, and there has to be more support beyond energy. I think the energy sector is well on its way, but when there are other sectors like you mentioned, the transport sector, which is already part of Pakistan's targets. We do believe that there is a large chunk of emissions coming from the agriculture sector, which is an area not touched so far. So that's an area where we have to work on. Also the energy efficiency area, of course, where there could be a lot more business activity, there could be a lot more innovation and entrepreneurship that could lead the way. So there are certain sectors which are still not touched by policy. But definitely policy will be a major driver, and consistent and focused policy with a clear view towards moving the needle. I think that's what's required. On the other hand, you talked about the regulators. I think the regulators are also on the front seat when it comes to moving the businesses. And we have both the corporate regulator and also the financial sector regulator who are quite active for the last few years in terms of passing guidelines, recommending way forwards to corporates in terms of how they should move. However, nothing up till January 1st this year was mandatory. So it is very fresh. We're only 8 months into the regulation. Well, actually, July 1st. Yeah. Sorry for the correction. July 1st, and we're just into this action of mandatory regulation for reporting. So I think the question is what will happen 1 year down the road when some 150 companies, top companies, will report on the sustainability practices, and the following year another 150 will report, and so on and so forth. So we know that they're going to report, but the question would be, what is the report going to be on? Yeah. And what will be the quality of reporting? And behind reporting is the action. So we'll have to only judge it then as to what the action is. So it's lots of small gaps to be filled in between those regulations that are already out there. I would touch upon the financial sector. I think the financial sector is also needs to press buttons. Definitely, very, very clearly, they have to mandate action from their front. Not only in terms of reporting, which they will have to do, but also in terms of their financing, their portfolios. Those are still not coming under the domain of mandatory action, because in Pakistan, the whole business sector, all the corporate sector, the business sector, they do borrow, right? That's borrowing is quite evident. But when we will tie up our capital borrowing with green programs, I think that will start to make a big difference in terms of.
I know this interesting tidbit that State Bank also asks banks to have a certain chunk of green financing now, because you have green banking guidelines in place, but without actually showing action, there's no point of those guidelines. And what happened is that banks did park that money for investments, but literally all of it went to solar financing because only policy in this particular area was completely clear.
Yeah.
So you have financial sector actors who want to do something, but they're also reluctant to do where you have lack of clarity, such as you mentioned that you have gaps in energy efficiency in agriculture.
Yeah.
And while these are gaps, I do think these are opportunities as well.
Yeah.
So that's definitely an area I think entrepreneurs should come in. I think your role at NIC as a advisor for ESG related
Chair of
tech,
ESG,
chair of
yeah.
ESG committee, also advising these new climate tech, agri tech, environment tech
Right.
startups.
Right.
What do you think can be done for these opportunities and gaps both?
Yeah, so basically, there is this supply side, right? So there is a demand that will come from, of course, from nature, from the country, and led by the private sector, the large private sector. And we know that down the road, the corporate sector, as they start to implement green action, they will need their supply chains to be filled. They will need their activities to be implemented. Of course, there can be a lot more, international support and help, but in the end, we are talking about building our own local infrastructure, which forms the supply chain. So, from the supply side, once this demand happens, we are already looking at, a couple of dozens of startups already mushrooming in the NIC arena, at least, and also in terms of private entrepreneurship. That people are looking at innovation and tech in terms of how they could support various environmental friendly activities, be it waste reduction or water management, etc., etc. So I think the idea is that the corporates and the SME/entrepreneurs need to link up. There needs to be, first of all, what do these entrepreneurs and startups require? They require, of course, mentoring, coaching, but they also require financing, right? They have ideas, they have technical knowledge to some extent that needs refining, so they need technical support, and they need financial support. I think this bit can be well partnered with the large corporates who need their supply chains to be built up. And I think that's what we're trying to do at the NIC, that we're trying to form those linkages. If there are 24 startups today, we hope that there are at least 5 dozen, by in a year's time or so. And there needs to be a lot more awareness, demand from our side, from the corporate side. We need to reach out to them and tell them that there is actually an upcoming demand. So the future engineers, the future graduates need to think about this, and then I think turn their attention towards climate tech and environment tech. And I do foresee that in the next couple of years there will be a good value chain forming in this respect. Yeah.
And because the value chain is also, we kind of can identify it because it also happens in our neighborhood. In other countries, there are certain sectors that are picking up. But for example, if we look at one of the largest drivers to our GDP, which is livestock now, there's a big opportunity for streamlining the supply chain, putting in, different products, dairy products, which do not exist. You import a lot of our cheese, for example.
Yeah.
And similarly, the cold chain storage does not exist. That requires a big player to come and work with these small entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So these are little gaps where perhaps it's the lack of policy as well as the right players doing anything. How do we really bridge this? Do you think that just policy coming in will help, or there's more well-intentioned people also needed to really build up this sector as well?
Yeah, I think very rightly picked this agri and then livestock sector, which is a decent chunk of our GDP, and also surprise, it's a major part of the emissions for Pakistan. But so far, like I said, we haven't talked about the sector at all. The issue is the informality of the sector. So, of course, when you talk about, energy and, maybe buildings, etc., you can still talk about, some big names, and then you've got the majority covered. But in livestock, for example, I think it's well known that more than 90% of the sector is informal.
Yes.
It's being controlled or held by the small farmer with 4 animals or 5 animals, and that's true throughout the dairy value chain. So, right from the farmer till the product reaches your fridge, it's a lot of it is informal. So it's a huge challenge in terms of formalizing it and who to incentivize, how to do it in a massive level. And because it's informal, it's also inefficient, and it's also not regulated, right? So the policy will not work here for sure in this respect. So it definitely requires, again, I think it's a pure economic need. I think the large or semi-large corporates in this business need to move down, in the value chain and formalize it, make it more corporatized, and also make it much more efficient. Once you start working towards efficiency of your own businesses, I think we have seen that by and large businesses already are looking at efficient green practices, right? Yes. So I think it's a question of driving efficiency in your businesses, and that's what I talk to businesses about. That isn't your business looking to be more efficient? And here's a green solution. Don't look at it as a green solution. Look at it as an efficient solution, and go for it. So I think if businesses start to do that, then I think these informal sectors will also start becoming more green at the same time.
I think there are also sectors which are very large in Pakistan. There's a lot of drive, and always I think the real estate sector comes to my mind, and I think of building materials. Most of Punjab still uses the brick kilns, which are very polluting, and the product they produce is an extremely wrong material to build a house in a geography like Punjab. It's not very insulated, because you have extreme temperatures, you have very cold weather, and then you have very hot weather. It doesn't protect against both. And similarly, it's prone to very easy absorption of water, which damages the structure as well. So no one's really thought about changing the buildings material, but I think NICA, for example, wants to bring in energy efficient buildings. So there's a policy there, but of course, as you said, that it's a different picture. For agri policy comes, you will still need people there. I think that's the same for energy efficiency as well. There's a policy, it's not fully clear, so no one's really developing the product to that extent as well.
Yeah, I think it's a question of who the players are, who are the players involved in the business of it. Are they formal? Are they corporate? Are they looking to be more efficient? And I'm sure in this area also probably construction is then in so many small hands that it's difficult. But yeah, I think energy efficiency could be also another big area too.
I think one more thing that I would want to understand is at NIC, for example, is there a conversation about opportunities such as these sectors? And what would be your advice to entrepreneurs, particularly who want to work in climate tech or already have some ideas? How do they go about really building their solution? What areas to look into? And if you haven't already tapped into an area, what to do and what's the next step forward?
Yeah, so I think the whole idea behind NICs is that they nurture initial concept level, concept stage ideas in terms of really mentorship, training, introducing them to partners. So there's a whole grooming exercise that it goes through, and then I think you sort of become part of the setup, and throughout your journey you have somebody to fall back on. So in terms of environment and climate tech, we've seen quite a large variety of startups, but having spoken to quite a few of them in person, they are really at a stage where they need a helping hand. They need that practical guidance in terms of, okay, who do we go and meet? So I think mentorship and advisory from people who are actually influential in those sectors. For example, I mentioned the water sector, or we mentioned, there are also geographically located startups. So there are startups in the KPK or in the Gilgit-Baltistan areas where there is this whole issue of infrastructure, housing, flooding, etc. So there are these startups who are looking to action, but there is no ministry, there is no mentorship, there is no advisory. So people who have this access, I think they need to jump in, and we are constantly looking to broaden our circle where we can get people to support them, talk to them, industries that are working on certain areas. It's really a matter of connection and people who are willing to go a little bit beyond their normal to support these startups. I think they will be, your arms and legs are there. These people are there to execute an action. All they need is hand holding, and then we will see a lot more successful and quality startups coming through.
Mm-hmm. And related to that, I think one thing that we always want to know is the positive impact we make or our business makes or a big conglomerate is making already. But no one actually has been able to really fully understand how to measure this impact. Mm-hmm. We have some regulatory work. You were also involved in the SCCP's recent effort to arm or require businesses to do the ESG reporting. Mm-hmm. Do you think that there is a suitable framework for all? Do we need to look into the impact picture right now, or do we need to just help build the ecosystem first and then look at impact? This is something I think not many people are focused on, because whenever we go to an international forum, Pakistan has this issue that we cannot really talk about positive impact that is already happening. One thing that I frequently give as an example is that we have the NDC target of renewable energy 60% by 2030. Now, it's very difficult to actually measure how much renewable has already been installed. There's so much in the rural areas, so much here and there, because if you quantify the entire energy consumption, we're already touching somewhere close to 60 in terms of renewable. You have hydel, which already gives you 45-50%. Then you have so much off-grid solar that no one's been able to quantify. So what do we really, say to these people? How do we start? Is this a government's job? Is this private sector's? How do we start measuring this impact together?
No, I think, this is really the problem of action is. I mean, first of all, we were not able to act on certain things, and now that we are acting on certain arenas, we don't know how well it's going. It's absolutely well pointed out, because the data issue is there. We don't know. We don't have information on, like you said, how much has been implemented, what different companies are doing. It's just a matter of putting it together. Even if when you talk about financing, it's anybody's guess as to what level of finance is coming through. And I don't think it should be rocket science. I mean, I think the responsibility definitely lies with the regulator or the government in terms of making those access points, those sort of funnels through which data should come through, and then it's a question of putting those dashboards together and reflecting it back to the stakeholders as to where we stand. It's mind-boggling as to why we are not tracking it. Maybe we think it's still a small issue, but if it moves really fast, then we will all be at a loss. Actually, data helps get you finance, so why not get the data in place? And not just the data about problems, but also data about what we are actually doing and what actually is moving. So it's hard, and like I said, if you want capital, you will need data, and without capital, and wherever there's capital, it comes with impact measurement. So if you want money, they will need to know what your impact is. So it's all linked. I think somebody needs to really think hard about this data issue, for sure.
Maybe there are more startups doing this in the future. No, but I think very well pointed out, and thank you for joining us as well. It's always a challenge in Pakistan when we look at a problem and try to come up with a solution, but solution has so many different areas. It needs a financier, it needs leadership, it needs policy direction, it needs the right incentives to actually make it work. And once it works, it really is unstoppable. Now, with the whole, I always point this out that for solar, the idea was doing very minimal, but doing the minimal and just not touching it any further has created this behemoth of an industry which is unstoppable, that the government itself often backtracks that we want to take back the net metering incentive but can't, because now the public is so well attuned to this solution that there's no way around. And I do think that, as you've pointed out, that there's solutions, climate solutions for livestock, there's solutions for building materials, which essentially need the same level of both support from financiers, policy, and then it will grow automatically, because that's what we see in other countries as well.
Yeah.
So thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure having you, and we will be back with more episodes. Stay tuned for more.